Yo guys, last weekend there was an alpha playtest for a new action RPG called Arkheron, and it's from a new studio. It's their first game called Bonfire Studios. And I jumped in and played it, and ever since the weekend of playing this game, I have been able to think of nothing else. Every game I jump on since then, I am thinking about going back and playing more. So I just want to talk about it. This isn't sponsored, and this isn't a review either. The game is, it's an alpha test, so it's still in early development. I just want to talk about it. So I'll show some footage in the background as we go over it, but basically this is a PvP focused ARPG. So most ARPGs that we're used to are story based with an emphasis on grinding gear, getting loot, making builds, and beating bosses, endgame content. This has all of the same things you're probably used to: fighting monsters, getting loot, and making builds, but then you're going with those builds to PvP. So it's really different, but it's still strangely familiar. So let's get into it. Okay, so first let's just go over what is Arkheron. What's the gameplay? What do you do? So it's a team-based game. So in the playtest, it was 3v3, so you can either join in with friends or there is matchmaking, and then you load into a lobby game of 45 people. And I've no idea when this comes out, if that's going to have single player or 2v2s or bigger groups. Don't know, but in the playtest, it was 3v3. And what you do is you join in with your group, and you all play on the same floor. Basically, there's this big floor, and there are monsters roaming around the floor, and they drop items, there are chests, and you just run around like an action RPG, fighting monsters and looting chests. As you do that, you pick up items, so you pick up like swords and bows, and they are all part of different builds. And then you have like necklaces, you have consumables, things like that. And it works a little bit like a battle royale in that everyone drops in and everyone's scurrying around looking for gear. Once you've found, some decent gear, you and your team can then progress on to certain quests, challenges, or you can start looking for PvP, or it might find you, and then you can go fight the other teams that are also all scurrying for gear. And then similar to a battle royale where a ring will close and force everybody together, what happens here is a beacon activates, and a beacon will activate, and you have to go to the beacon and ascend. So everybody wants to get to this beacon, so that kind of forces some fights. It forces people to come together as groups, fight each other, and the victors will ascend. And then when you get to like the next floor, you've cooled a portion of the lobby. So I think it was 45 people. A good chunk will be gone. And then you'll start looting the second floor. You'll be going for the chests. There's loot rooms, more challenges, more stronger bosses. And you're looting around and again ascend until there's a winner. So that's kind of the gameplay. And that alone I thought was okay. It's a fairly interesting thing. But there was a couple of things that made it really, really, really fun. As someone who loves action RPGs, the main thing that I really, really like about them is builds. I really like making builds. And in this game, you're making all of the builds on the fly. You're making it in the game based on what drops. So let's say one of your party has a staff, the other one has a bow, they're both using like ranged. Maybe you could find something that traps people and then you can like funnel them down. Maybe you could make a build that stuns people or pulls their team away. Maybe both of your teammates have melee weapons. Maybe you can do something that pulls the enemy in and stuns them, and then your team can wail on them. And that's like the beauty of the game, but it goes a step further. And I think this is what hooked me. So you've obviously got like quality of gear, the basic and then rarer, but rarer quality and better drops. And there's like rare chests, like legendary chests and mythic kind of chests. So there's this like rarity you're chasing, but then there are named sets and they make tier sets. So if you have two of the same set, you have, a 2-piece. And when you have the 4 set, you have a 4-piece. When you have the 4 set of a named piece, so I can't remember the names off the top of my head, but say you have 4 of the same set, you then have the ability to evolve your character. You basically evolve into the person of the set you have. So for example, there's like a fire guy, there's a fire set. The necklace sends forth like a wave of fire. There's like a lantern and that shoots a ball of fire. Then there's like a staff, I think, that has another fire ability. When you have all 4 of the fire set, you turn into this fire creature and have all extra powers and a damage increase, and it's just wild. And yeah, the sets were just so cool. I played the fire one a few times. There's one that was more melee focused. I think they could go invisible and then they could come out with like these, like kind of like a rogue type build. There was one that could create like ice walls and could block players in. So say you've got like, you're against 3 people and you pull one out, you then put a wall up, you can just like 3v1 the guy you pulled in. Really fun. Yeah, I don't know. There's like an electric guy who could place like a sentry. It's just so fun, and I want to play more. That's all I can say, really. So that's the game. I don't know. I didn't see any long-term progression in a way, like where you can, take stuff. That's one thing I would have liked, where you can take stuff after the game based on how well you do. You could earn something, and then you could do something out of the game to, you know, make your character stronger, or cosmetics. That would be pretty cool. But like I say, this was an alpha playtest of the gameplay, so all of that could be coming. Who knows? The game is still in heavy development. The only other thing I want to mention is the quality. So I play a lot of like alphas, early accesses, playtests for this channel, and generally you can feel you're playing an alpha, you can feel you're playing a playtest, and some of it isn't that much of a fun experience. You're kind of playing it thinking, oh, this needs some work. With this game, if this released today in the state it was in, like just the gameplay, it's so polished. It is so much more polished than the kind of stuff you usually see, which is really surprising. I think a lot of it does come down to the studio. So Bonfire Studios is a new studio, but it's led by a Blizzard, ex-Blizzard CCO, which I think that's like the creative lead, like the top of like the creative department. And you can feel that this has very experienced and professional people making the game. This doesn't feel like an indie studio. It doesn't feel like, you know, someone who's making this in their bedroom. It feels like a AAA game from a brand new company, which is really, really exciting. And hopefully you can see that in a way, you know, the animations, the sound, the character design, it all just is good. On top of that, like the matchmaking just was smooth. There's voice in game that was pretty clear in terms of like grouping up with randoms. You could ping, you could mark the map, you could voice in game with them. You could also mute them if you wanted to, which I did for the couple of recordings I have here. But yeah, overall, this felt really, really smooth and surprisingly good for an alpha. I don't have much else to say. I just wanted to raise more awareness. I'd never heard of this game last weekend, and I imagine there's lots of people who've never heard of it too. So now you have. Next time there's a playtest, another alpha test or a beta, or if it comes early access, or whenever you hear about the next time to try the game, I definitely recommend it. I think the more people that play it, give feedback, the more potential it has to have a really good start. But yeah, I'm going to wrap it up here. That's all I pretty much wanted to say. Don't judge my terrible gameplay in the background. I was doing my best. I was trying to learn. But thank you for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.